When we're going through a challenging time in our relationship, how we handle conflict can make the difference between whether we stay together or separate and build our lives apart. What I found super fascinating is that the majority of arguments in a long term relationship, 69% in fact, are perpetual as opposed to solvable. The who's gonna empty the dishwasher, the whose turn is it to fold the laundry, this kind of everyday stuff that comes up in any of our relationships. But this idea of perpetual, the differences in parenting, the differences in values, the differences in how we might be spending our money, all of these set points that might really ripen conflict, especially when things are stressful. In any of our long term relationships, conflict comes up, and how we handle it can mean the difference of moving on together, more solid, more strong after resolving the conflict, or sidestepping it and letting it kind of build up under the proverbial rug until one day it just kind of breaks. Over almost 2 decades of working with couples in distress, I've learned a lot about conflict, how to manage it, how to talk about it, what to do about it, tips of how to make it feel not so difficult, and I wanted to share a bit of that with you. To start off, I was so surprised when I learned conflict in long term relationship kind of comes down to two categories: solvable and perpetual. Solvable, that's the easy stuff. Who's folding the laundry? Who's doing bedtime with the kids tonight? How do we keep that balance in the relationship? What's a little more difficult is the perpetual. And I got a bit of bad news for you. 69% of the conflict inside of couples is perpetual. Things like the difference in values, the different ways we might approach parenting, how we talk about the in laws, how we talk about the big things. And that really comes from each of our family of origin. How did we learn how to deal with conflict? Was it avoided at all costs? Did it become this huge blowout fight that actually had quite a bit of recovery needed to balance it out? How does each person inside of that relationship come to conflict? If you found yourself circling around the perpetual arguments, some of the same themes, some of the same stuck points, and kind of not getting anywhere because you're both coming from these different perspectives, I'd love to share with you some insights that perhaps you haven't been covered before that may be able to end that painful argument and get you a little bit further than where you've been stuck. First of all, we want to be able to understand your partner brings his or her family imprint, their way of expressing, their way of handling conflict, and that's got to be talked out first. When we can come from a place of understanding where we actually lean in and get curious instead of just being furious with the situation, we can get a little further. We say things like, oh, okay, I guess I understand why you would have that perspective or why you come at it from that way of thinking. But I have the complete opposite view. Let's talk about that. Notice in that example, there's nothing about defensiveness and holding your ground. It's more about curiosity. That's how you came to that. Let's talk about how I think about it differently. It's really the only way we can work with that 69% of perpetual arguments that come up in long-term relationship to get traction, to have something, have a different outcome. Otherwise, we tend to be stuck and frustrate the heck out of each other in talking about it.